When I moved into my new house, I was ecstatic. It was everything I'd ever wanted: modern, spacious, with a huge backyard. The house was located on a quiet suburban street, and the previous owner assured me it had no issues. Everything seemed perfect at first, but something kept bothering me. There was a basement door that wouldn't stay closed. At first, I didn't think much of it. Old houses always have little quirks, right? But every time I'd walk by the kitchen, I'd notice the basement door slightly ajar. I'd close it firmly, even locked it a few times, but it would always be open again when I came back. One night, I decided to investigate. I stood in front of the basement door, flashlight in hand, feeling ridiculous for even being nervous. The door creaked as I pulled it open. The stairs leading down into the basement were shrouded in complete darkness. I switched on the light, but the bulb flickered for a few seconds before burning out. Great. Typical, I thought. Using my flashlight, I slowly descended into the basement. It was cold, damp, and smelled musty, like no one had been down there in ages. But it was just an ordinary basement. Concrete floors, old furniture, some dusty boxes. Nothing out of the ordinary. Just as I was about to head back upstairs, I heard it. A faint tapping sound. My heart skipped a beat, but I convinced myself it was probably just pipes or the wind outside. But then, the tapping grew louder, more rhythmic, more deliberate. It was coming from the far end of the basement, behind a stack of old wooden crates. My pulse quickened as I approached the crates, my flashlight shaking slightly in my hand. As I got closer, I noticed something strange. A small door behind the crates, something I hadn't noticed before. It was almost hidden, like it was never meant to be found. I felt a cold chill creep up my spine, but against my better judgment, I reached out to touch the door. The moment my fingers brushed against the wood, the door jerked slightly, as if something, or someone, was trying to open it from the other side. I stumbled back, heart racing, as the tapping turned into a frantic knocking. I didn't wait around to find out what was on the other side. I bolted up the stairs, slamming the basement door shut behind me. That night, I heard the knocking again, this time from the basement door itself. I've lived in the house for 6 months now, and I still don't know what's behind that door. I've had it locked, bolted, and even put heavy furniture in front of it, but every morning it's still open. When I first bought my house, the previous owners left behind a few pieces of furniture, including an antique mirror that hung in the hallway. It had a gold, ornate frame and looked like it belonged in a museum. I wasn't a huge fan of its eerie vibe, but I figured I'd keep it for the time being. The first night in the new house, I woke up to strange noises. It sounded like someone walking around in the hallway. I assumed it was just the house settling, or maybe I was just on edge from all the moving stress. But then I noticed something weird the next morning. The mirror had been moved. Just slightly, maybe an inch or so to the left, but it was enough for me to notice. I didn't think much of it. Maybe I had bumped into it while unpacking, or maybe it had always been in that position, and I just hadn't noticed. I straightened it back and went about my day. Over the next few nights, though, things got weirder. I started waking up at exactly 3:15 a.m. No noises, no creaks, just this strange sense of unease that would wash over me. It wasn't until the fourth night that I heard it again. The sound of footsteps, right outside my bedroom door. This time I was sure it wasn't my imagination. I grabbed my phone, using its light as I crept into the hallway. The moment I stepped out, the footsteps stopped, but my eyes were drawn to the mirror. The same mirror that had now been shifted at least a foot from where I had last placed it. I stared at it for a moment, and in the dim light, something caught my eye. Something in the reflection. It was faint, but there, behind me, I could see the outline of a figure standing at the far end of the hallway. I whipped around, but no one was there. When I looked back at the mirror, the figure was gone too. My heart raced as I moved toward the mirror. As I got closer, I noticed something even stranger. The reflection of the hallway didn't seem to match up perfectly with reality. It was subtle, but the mirror reflected things that weren't there. Furniture I didn't own, paintings I had never hung. I felt a cold chill as I examined it closer. That's when I saw it. The figure was back, but this time it wasn't at the end of the hallway. It was right behind me. I bolted back into my bedroom, slamming the door shut and pushing my dresser against it. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning, I took the mirror down, planning to throw it away. But when I tried to carry it outside, it felt heavier, like something was resisting. I struggled with it for a good 5 minutes before it finally slipped out of my hands, shattering into pieces on the floor. I thought that would be the end of it, but ever since the mirror broke, I've started seeing reflections out of the corner of my eye, on windows, on the TV, even in my phone screen. And every time, I see that same figure standing just behind me. When I moved into my new house, there was one room that remained locked. The realtor told me that the previous owner had lost the key and it was used mostly for storage. Since I didn't need the space right away, I didn't think much of it. I had plenty of other rooms to worry about, and after the chaos of moving in, the locked room slipped to the back of my mind. A few weeks passed and I settled into the house. Everything was normal, except for the occasional sounds I would hear at night, faint bumps and creaks that I chalked up to the house settling. But there was something about the locked room that always bothered me. Every time I walked past it, I felt a strange heaviness in the air, like the room was watching me. One night, I was lying in bed when I heard something different, something that made my heart skip a beat. It sounded like the door to the locked room had rattled, as if someone was trying to open it from the inside. I dismissed it, thinking maybe I had imagined it. But the next night, it happened again, this time, louder. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I had to know what was behind that door. I called a locksmith the next day, and he arrived that afternoon. As he worked on the lock, I watched anxiously, my nerves on edge. After about 15 minutes, there was a loud click, and the door swung open. The room was empty, save for an old, dusty armchair in the corner and a small wooden table. The air inside felt colder than the rest of the house, and the smell. It was like the room had been sealed for decades, untouched. I stepped inside, feeling an eerie sense of intrusion. There were no windows, just bare walls and that unsettling chair. I tried to shake off the unease and told myself it was just an empty room. But that night, I woke up to the sound of the door creaking open. I hadn't touched it since the locksmith left, but now it was wide open, and the hallway was bathed in darkness. My throat went dry as I listened. I could hear breathing, slow, heavy breathing coming from the hallway. My pulse quickened, and I grabbed my phone for light. I shone it into the hallway, and there, just outside the locked room, was the chair. Somehow it had been moved into the hallway, facing my bedroom door. My heart pounded in my chest as I stared at it, my mind racing. The next morning, I put the chair back into the room and slammed the door shut. But the same thing happened again that night. The door creaked open, and the chair had moved. This time it was even closer, positioned just a few feet from my bedroom. I couldn't stay in the house another night. I packed a bag and left, staying at a friend's place. When I finally worked up the courage to return a few days later, the house was quiet. The locked room door was closed and the chair was back inside exactly where I had left it. But here's the thing, I never told anyone about the chair. Yet when I was at my friend's place, she told me she had the strangest dream. In it, I was sitting in an old chair, staring at her from across the room, not saying a word. If these creepy stories gave you chills and you want to hear more real horror stories, don't forget to hit subscribe. Share your thoughts or any scary experiences you've had in the comments below. Be sure to turn on notifications so you don't miss out on any new stories. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay safe out there.